So all these mums on social media that are like great mums, I don't know if they're a great mum, because I wouldn't want to be sitting next to you whilst, and then, having dinner with the kids while you're like setting up your camera and making sure it's all faked, right? Yeah. It's all staged. And so by just even documenting it, you're changing the paradigm of what being a great mum is. Are you a great mum, or are you a great mum because people are watching you? Okay, welcome to the All In podcast, where we go all in on... What are we going all in on?
life as a married man. Fucking hell,
we go all in on life as a married man. I'm Lintrin. I'm Lin, and this is Al. Together we make Al Lin, All In, which is the podcast episode. It's quite catchy, isn't it, Al?
Yeah, I love it. That's why I got the license plate. So we actually, our cars will have the exact same license plate.
Yeah. And I know people think I'm in Victoria, you're in Sydney. They think we're in two places at once. So meet my host and co-host, whoever the host is. I'm the host, Lintrin, and this is my co-host, Alex Ranieri, who's the founder of High Performance Father. And welcome to the very first episode.
Pumped, man. Can't wait. And just on that note, like, all in is such a catchy phrase, even to the point where I'm willing to put it on my car where people will think there's an Asian driving because of the way it's spelt. But nonetheless, it'll be a big white man who's behind the wheel. I'm looking forward to it.
It's spelled ALLINH, right?
Yes.
So Al, the first thing is, how did you convince me to create a podcast with you? Like, I've been in the shadows for the last 3 years. Not a lot of people know who I am, right? I've been in the shadows in the last 3 years, kind of behind the scenes. How did you convince me to get onto a podcast? Like, why is this so important? What is this about?
But I just think it's, and I say it's respect. I just think it's fucking selfish for you to be very successful and then go in the fucking background and not share what it is to be a as I coined the term, and we've coined the term, working together as business partners, a high performance father. And I say that with love and respect, bro, but like, you've had some amazing success, father of 2 kids now, Atlas and Ocean, beautiful little creatures. And it's, it's something that I just think that, and it's not about me standing on the mountain, I'm here alone. This is a big fucking message and it's important, but I just think it's time and time for you to share and for us to collaborate in helping so many men out there, not just get their shit together, but see that, hey, there's something I can fucking stand for instead of falling for everything. And that's important, man. Like, that's a big thing that we need to address in many different ways with many layers. And also, I triggered you with something, and I brought you back. I relit the fire, which you won't tell me. You won't share with me what the trigger was, but apparently I said something and challenged you. And look at you now, you're fucking back. You've got the red and blue. And
I'm back, baby. I'm back. Yeah, you did trigger me. You said something, but I'll probably share it later on in episode 100. We make it to 100 episode, I'll tell you. Fantastic. I think this is really important. I think right now more than ever, like, I want to bring men together, fathers together. I think the dynamic of the family men and just great families that are growing together, we're losing that. We're losing that culture. We're losing that tradition in today's society. We are growing into a society in the Western world, in Australia, in the US in particular. They're generally the leaders of stuff, right? And we kind of follow behind, but we're just losing tradition. We're losing good old values of what it's like to be a family. And I think I've spoken to you about this before, and like, how is a good family supposed to be raised? How do we raise our kids in today's society? How do we build a really good family unit where a wife, a husband, and children can actually bond together and grow? There's a couple of reasons. We're seeing like divorce rates hit sky high times. Okay, we like divorce rates at an all-time high. That means for every divorce, there are kids that are going out there without a father figure or a mother figure. Okay, and you and I both know, like, I know that if I was to get divorced with Kerry, like, I'm just not going to be that much of as good of a father that I can be with Kerry. Because quite often I'm like, well, the kid's going to be at Kerry's house, and like, I don't really like Kerry anymore, hence why we're divorced. And like, I'll start to see her patterns within them, and I'll get triggered at them, because now I'm like, oh, you're adopting these patterns from your mum. There's a whole lot of issues, but I feel like, with the divorce rates, that's one aspect. The second aspect as to why I wanted to do this was because we've got two kids now. They're extremely young. Ocean's 3 and Atlas is like 5 months. But I've just seen the amount of work that my wife Kerry and our wives Corinne, like Corinne has had to do that I didn't get to see, but I'm sure you did. And there's just not this level of respect for the woman in being the mother, in being the rock, the foundation of the family. And so because they're not respected, the feminists are going out there and trying to seduce our wives to become this boss lady, to become this alpha woman who has it all, who has like this boss babe vibe, and it's not good for our kids. It's not good for the family dynamic. It's not even good for them because they're in this conundrum where they want to be a mum, but they're told that they should be more, that being a mum is simply not enough. And as I look at this with Kerry raising our children, I go, man, like being a mum's the hardest job in the world. It is the most insane job in the world. Like women have this amazing nurturing power and this level of patience and this energy that I can't bring to the children that they need, then you can't bring, but they're just not respected. They're not seen. They get abused by the kids. The kids abuse them all the time. They don't get recognized. They don't get the status that you and I get in business. Like you and I, people go, oh man, you make money. You're awesome. I've seen your ads. I've seen you on YouTube. I've seen your stuff. We get all this recognition. Our team looks up to us. But as a mum, you really let go of your self-identity. And I think this podcast is so important. Obviously, we're here to bring recognition to mothers, but we're here to share our stories. We're not here to preach anything. We're here to just share what two blokes are going through inside of our 30s, raising kids, trying to keep our marriage alive, build a really good marriage, right? Like, what does that even look like? How do we even parent our children into today's society with all of the chaos going on, with all of the confusion of whether or not they're a boy, they're a girl, they're in the middle, they don't know who they are, right? And we're just having some real and honest conversations on what it's like for men just like us who want a traditional family unit. I wouldn't say traditional, but I'd want a strong family unit. Like we look back to our ancestors in the caveman time, we had a lot of wisdom there. And it's just trying to bring ancient wisdom back up to the modern world. Okay, so I think that's kind of what sparked this conversation. I think that's why I'm back here. I think this is so critical, so important. I think that men like us need to speak up more. Hence why I'm doing my bit here. So Al, do you want to dive into this with what is it like to be a man in today's modern world? Like what are the responsibilities, the stresses that men have, that men aren't even aware of, that they have? And if you're a man about to get married, well, you know, you're going to face these stresses and these experiences that me and Al have gone through. If you're a man that's 50 and you have teenage daughters, well, great. Hopefully you can impart some wisdom to us so that we don't, we can learn from your lessons. But what is it like to be a man in today's world? Why is it so hectic? Why is it so hard?
Yeah, great intro, bro. And look, to be fair, it's really tough for a lot of men in the world today where you just get blindsided by the conditions that has led to more chaos, more turbulent experiences, more volatility when it comes to making choices, where you focus, where you spend your time. Everyone wants your attention. Technology's going through the fucking roof faster than ever, you know. I remember seeing a stat that the modern day 12-year-old has experienced and already been exposed to more than only 50 years ago what an 80-year-old would have gone through in their lifetime. So that's insane. You're already looking at a 6.5x for a 12-year-old too, where they don't have the mental capacity. So take that into today's world, gentlemen, and all of a sudden you've got a man who's looking to get married, which unfortunately through the most part the legal systems definitely does not work in the favor of the man. He's left much more exposed, much more vulnerable, which is why choosing and aligning with your queen is more critical than ever, because you will get fucked up if things don't line up and there isn't that alignment and clarity at the start, certainly throughout the middle. Without those two, there is an end. There absolutely is, and it's not a happy ending for you. And then also, as Lynn's working through now, and has been for 3 years, but I have with my 6, 4, and 2-year-olds, my children, fatherhood. Like, here's the thing, boys. Like, making money, business, health, fitness, all that shit's fucking easy. Like, you all look back when you have children, you're like, man, what was I doing? What was I spending my time on? I had so much more time. And that's the crazy part. All that stuff in isolation is still actually quite easy. And it's very simple. It's very simple to make money. It's very simple to have a great body. Throw in the mix fatherhood, marriage, helping provide your wife's needs and maintaining a rhythm with that consistently, not here's what I'm going to do once a month. Being a father with no sleep, children having ear infections, cold, flus, operations. All of my children have had operations. They've got horrendous ears, so grommets, adenoids, tonsils, all these things that deprive you of sleep, energy, focus, and tear you to shit. What we're left with in today's world, gentlemen, is no roadmap, no rule book, and ultimately no cohort, no environment of people who are willing to speak the truth like you and I are, Lynn, to actually say, hey, this is the fucking reality of life, but also this is what you can do about it. So what happens, Lynn? Yeah, men are left isolated, alone, another lone wolf story, and they break down and fall apart.
I want to dive into something that you said just earlier on, but why are men not getting married these days? Like when we look back in the last 30, 40 years, like I got married to Kerry when I was 27. I think most people I know right now, most of my friends, I'm 33, most of them aren't married, most of them don't have children. Why do you think most men are kind of delaying? Like back in our parents' days, you go back 20 years, people would get married at 22, have kids by 24. And when I look at Kerry having kids at 30 and like how much her body is getting smashed because she's a little bit older, she's 33 having kids, and she's, her number one wish was, I regret having kids too late at 33, or she had Ocean at 30. She wished that she was like, man, if I could do it back at 18, I would, because that's when I could really bounce back. Why do you think men are so reluctant to get married? Like you look at the next generation, the 25-year-old. If I talk to the 25-year-old, I got abs in next door, and I talk to him, and he's nowhere near marriage, right? He's like, yo, no, I'm not getting married. We know plenty of other men that are delaying marriage. Why do you think? I've got my own answer, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
It's a fair point, and I think because I'm so far into the space and the work of men who are already married, I probably haven't given it a great deal of thought. But if I was going to shoot from the hip, so to speak, and talk intuitively, it's probably a couple of different reasons. Firstly, logically, in today's world, and I know I mentioned briefly the court system if divorce was an outcome for for a couple that was married, logically, there seems to be very few pros versus cons for a man to be bound that way.
Do you think like the 25-year-old thinks shit like, oh, it's not a man's world out there with the courts, so I'm not going to get married? Like, do a lot of men think that way? The younger men that are coming up?
I think they're aware of it.
I think that's for the older men. I think that's for the guys inside the community. They're like, fuck, I've been screwed over. And it's not until you've been screwed or you're going through a divorce that you're really aware to that.
Potentially, maybe it's more so the availability, what they've actually got access to on other things that could, fill the void, close the gap. Maybe they don't understand the value of fatherhood. But I'd say it's very easy these days with, even pornography is a simple release to get instant gratification and have needs being met and met.
You got OnlyFans. Why would you get married? Why would you get locked into one person when you've got the world is at your fingertips? I had a great theory on this, and I just think that over time men have gotten weaker and softer, and they've become less committed to going all in on stuff. Funnily enough, this podcast all in, but you go back a generation and men, we were laborers, we built cities, we were working nonstop all day, we were hardworking men. Now you've just got a society where men are less committed. You've got so many options available to you. You've got Tinder, you've got OnlyFans, you've got porn, you've got all these new things coming up. And so men don't have to get married. I think men are afraid. Like young men right now, the 25-year-olds, I probably wouldn't call them men. I'd call them boys. They're afraid of commitment, and because they're afraid of what happens after marriage. You're married. There's all this responsibility that you have to take on, because generally what happens is, okay, you want to get married, you have to buy a ring. A ring's not cheap, dude. Like an engagement ring, a diamond ring, you're looking at anywhere between $5,000 and $30,000 if you're between that range. Then you've got the ring. Then you've got the marriage ceremony. What's that? $30,000, $50,000, $60,000 there. Then after the marriage ceremony, you've got to buy a house, because that's what your parents want. That's what your in-laws want you to do. Hey, you have to buy a house, look after my daughter. Then after a house, you've got a baby. And so there's this thing where like the guy is at the edge of the cliff. And I think I felt like I didn't feel this way at 27. I just knew I wanted to marry Kerry. But I'm just starting to see it more and more, is that there's this fear. It's kind of like, for most of us guys, right, generally how we've grown up is we delay shit as long as possible. If we can push it off, we can push it off, right? And so if we have any, like our gut instinct is either all in, or like we're kind of pushing things off. Like, you want to take the garbage down the bin? Oh, no, not tonight. I'll forget. It's not a big deal until your wife tells you hey, take the garbage down the bin. I'm like, all right, I'll take it down. I'll take the kids out, right? Generally, that's how us guys operate. We generally think about 2 to 3 things a day, and that's how we roll. So I think most boys out there, they're just afraid of commitment, and they're afraid of responsibility. They're so afraid of responsibility because after you get married, you now have to become a man. You now are committed to going, shit, I need to figure out how to make this work. And the 25-year-olds right now, they have barely got their lives figured out. They don't know what they're going to do. They don't know how to make money. They're still confused about, living in the past and, going with they're not thinking about their future. And so I think I think when I look at it, that's kind of what I see.
Yeah, I agree.
Which kind of leads to the next question, because I'm trying to figure out, I'm in High Performance Father. I'm watching thousands of men go through. You're helping thousands of men try to fix their marriage, fix their family. But it's kind of like, well, why don't we backtrack to the very start of how men got married in the first place? Did men actually go, hey, I'm actually going to marry you. You're the love of my life. I'm going to build a family with you. Or do most men get married because it's like, I've been in a relationship for 5 years with this girl. There's no one better out there. She's pressuring me. She needs to have kids. Her ticking times. She's a ticking. She's a ticking clock, and her clock's gonna run out. And hey, if we don't get married now, then never. And so I think by trying to figure out the destruction and the chaos and the divorce, well, let's figure out why people actually got married in the first place. I know that for me and Kerry, it was like, why did I marry Kerry? She put no pressure on me to marry her or propose. I just kind of knew, hey, I want to be with this girl. And that's it. Like, I'm all in. I made a decision. I think for most men, from my understanding, is that they don't make decisions. They kind of get wedged in. There's pressure. There's pressure from the wife's best friend, the girlfriend's best friend. Hey, you're going to marry her? You guys have been together. There's a pressure from the in-laws. Hey, you've been dating my daughter for 5 years. When are you guys going to get married? There's all this. When are you guys going to get married? When are you going to have kids? Shit, she's coming up to 30, right? That's like the age. It's like when your girlfriend approaches 30, that's kind of it. Would you agree with that? Like, in order for us to figure out why there's so many divorces, we've got to figure out what was the commitment in the first place, and the lack of commitment is kind of what I see.
Yeah, that's a great insight, man, and a valid point. I definitely agree. I look back and even reflecting in my own life, I've been with Corinne since I was 17. She was 15, so very young, high school, and then pursued professional sport throughout my 20s, which came with a lot of ups and downs, very volatile career, injuries, operations, and whatnot. And the whole while, there was pressure to take that next step. And I look back now.
Did you have that pressure with Corinne? Like, since you guys were dating since high school, she was your high school sweetheart. You dated for 10 years. How long did you date until you got married?
10 years, 11 years. So I was 27, turning 28, and she was 20, 25, turning 26, and we got married after 10 years, and that's crazy because I look back now and there was a point though where I did want to do it, and that was that point. But then I was pressured for at least 6 of those years. Like, I get it when you're 20, back in the early 2000s, there's not really that, hey, you should be married at 20. 100 years ago, 100%, you're already married with 2 kids. But when I was starting to get in my early 20s, 22, 23, 24, there was pressure, man. And I wasn't committed. And I look back now, Lynn, and I'm a strong man who was chasing sport and had that willpower and mindset to want to perform. Yet in that area, I still didn't want to shoulder the responsibility of stepping up,
commitment, is there?
Being married and making, because I wasn't making money, even though I was trying to pursue it with sport. And so I think there was fear because I wasn't ready for the responsibility of actually going, hey, I'm going to provide this fucking amazing life for you, because I couldn't even see it, let alone step up to do it.
It's so funny. We have so much clarity and direction in what we want for our own personal life. Like, I want to be, I want this much money. I want to buy this car. I want to have this. I want to have this body. I want to get this strong in the gym. When it comes to the relationship, there's the, she'll be right, mate. She'll be right. And you kind of just drift into it. And quite often we let the women kind of dictate. And for us men, the common theme is that we allow the woman to dictate what's happening in our marriage. I think that's a good and a bad thing. There's pros and cons to everything. And so I think because of that pressure, people get married for the wrong reasons. And because people get married for the wrong reasons, they then, that's kind of where the first part happens, I think, right? The downfall, the lack of alignment, the lack of values. Like, Kerry and I got married for the wrong, she just said yes. I think she said yes because we'd bought a house together. And she was like, well, if I'm not going to marry this guy, I'm not going to date anybody else. And her parents were like, yeah, this guy's amazing. You should marry him. And she was like, yeah. But she didn't marry me. We didn't sit down and go, hey, like, do we want the same thing? Are we going to, like, when you and I became business partners, we sat down and we said, okay, what's the vision? What's the goal? Do we want the same thing? What's your role? What's my role? Right? We were extremely clear. And then when we opened our company together, we literally had clear roles, clear visions, clear alignment, and that's how, like, shit's been amazing, right? Like, no arguments, no chaos, no cracks, no divorce, nothing like that. I think if there was one piece of advice I'd give back to myself, and it's weird because I don't even think I'd take it, but if there's one piece of advice, I don't think I would take this advice. I'd say, hey, get aligned on your values. Like, figure out, like, what do you want with this person for the rest of their life? How many kids do you want? What do you want to be doing with the kids? What do you want to build with this woman? Because for all of us, the person that holds us back the most is our wives. Like, she is the bigger. She can either help us grow or she can actually hold you back. And for a lot of men that I see in high performance father, their wives might hold them back, but they have a bigger story that their wives hold them back. And so it's a true thing. Both you and I have experienced that. I've experienced this so much where in business, I've constantly felt, oh my gosh, Kerry's holding me back. Kerry's holding me back. Kerry's holding when we were together without kids because all she wanted to do was travel. And I'm like, woman, why do you want to travel for? I want to set us up. I want to get rich. She's like, nah, I don't want to get rich. Screw your mastermind. I don't want to take me to the Amazon. And I hated it, dude. Because I honestly felt, man, I love this woman so much, but there's something wrong because whenever I spend time with her doing what she wants, I feel empty as fuck. And when she does what I want, she feels empty as fuck. And that's the craziest thing.
It's tough too, isn't it, man? Because what you're talking about, even in giving yourself advice that you probably wouldn't take,
yeah.
It brings me to the point of what I wrote here was existing version. It's fucking hard because how would these men know to have the conversation with their fiancés, so to speak, or their to-be wife, when they're planning their values, their goals, dreams, everything, all of that still, even the picture they paint, could change. And this is the risk of life. Life's the risk, right? All that could change because everything they're planning is coming from that existing version. So let's say that I gave myself the same advice that you're talking about, and I go back to 21-year-old Al. I've been with Karim for 4 years. I wouldn't take the advice either because that's 21-year-old version. I go, no, I'm playing fucking first grade rugby league, man. Yeah. She'll be right. And that's the hard part, actually creating wisdom in these younger men today to go, no, you need to plan and look ahead at the big picture.
You make a really great point. You can't, as much planning as you want, you can't plan ahead because with every year you become a different person. With every different version of you have different goals. You pivot, you learn new things. So I think the answer then, and that's a really good lesson, the answer is actually being able to deal with the cards you're dealt at every given time that you're dealt those cards. Like every year you're dealt a new set of cards. Like this year I've been dealt Atlas. It's been amazing, but I haven't had a lot of sleep, right? The second one's killed me in terms of compared to Ocean. But you deal with the cards that you dealt. And so it's actually being able to have a set of principles. You go, okay, these are my cards. How do I get out? Like it's weird. It's like my hands are tied this way in a new way. There's a new combination code. All right, figure it out on how to get out of this particular situation to get to what you want. So you were kind of with Corinne, and you kind of fell into your marriage. When did you have Stella? Did you plan for Stella? Was she unplanned?
Yes. So we struggled. That was another frustrating thing too, I guess, because when we got married, the next natural step was children. Everyone's different, but for us, we'd already spent time together. So it's not like, okay, we're married, let's live together for 5 years. We'd already been together for 10. And Corinne couldn't fall pregnant. She has severe endometriosis. I've got an average sperm count according to the test. So there's that issue too for the man. Enough, but obviously that was hindering between the two. Yeah, man, she couldn't fall pregnant. So we had to do IVF.
How did you feel having an average sperm count? Did you tell people? Like, I know you're really transparent about that now, but you know, if I had I know that when you said that, I'm like, whoa, if I had an average sperm count, I'd feel like less of a man.
Manhood. Shit.
Yeah, manhood. It's the only thing that men have, right? To like reproduce.
Yeah. And it's tough because like my my uncle couldn't have children, and he had a diminished sperm count. And I remember hearing his story, because being on the Italian side, very proud, people. It was, and we all have a level of pride, but for him, it was really fucking tough to swallow. So for me, even just having an average, it hurt, man. And that coupled with when we did IVF, when I went to the sperm clinic and did all that stuff, I actually saw my friend at the same time, and we didn't even know that each other had issues. And I messaged him in the car, and I was like, hey, like I saw him as he passed, and I was like that, whoa. And I messaged him and I said, hey man, not to sound intrusive, but like, were you just at this one Fennel Street in Parramatta going and getting your sperm number? He's like, yeah, I was, and I thought that was you, and I was so embarrassed as well, man. So because I was a very proud man at that stage, I was. I'd played rugby league and doing CrossFit. Obviously all the persona of being a high
Big,
testosterone
strong, tough.
male. Yeah.
Yeah, the big alpha, the 192 centimeter center forward.
Yeah, the swimmers don't swim, So no, it was, man. But now, that did pass reasonably quickly. But looking back, yeah, it was something I never told anyone about. And even the whole IVF thing, like I was injecting these hormone things into Corinne to help her, and we kept failing. And as a man, there was nothing we could do. Like we can't change it, and it was tough. But we ended up having Stella. We were successful. Stella and Lillian were both IVF, and I was 30, just about to turn 31.
Yeah. What were you doing when you had Stella? Like what was your like financial life, personal life like? The reasons why I asked about finance is because I gave a piece of advice. Abs was asking me, hey, like what one piece of advice would you give me? Like it's his birthday today. And he's like, what one piece of advice would I give to you before you get married? And I said, bro, like figure out your money. I said, bro, you have to figure out your money, because generally, like I've noticed that for myself and a lot of people, 99.8% of the arguments have money as a root cause of why the argument started in the first place, and the excuse for those arguments are shadowed in bullshit. Like, oh, I'm just going to call
100%.
it out. Yeah.
No, 100%, man. It's like that. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great birthday present for Abs.
Yeah. And I said, bro, you got to get your money sorted out. Like, you just have to be like, whatever that number, feel like money isn't a constraint for you. Feel like you're not strained. Feel like you're not scarce in money. Feel like you know how to make money. You have the power to make money. Because I think that's a very, very important skill in order to provide for your family. I've noticed, like, when I used to grow up and when I used to start, when I dated Carrie and I didn't have a lot of money, and she wanted to go out to the organic store to buy organic chicken, I'm like, yo, go to Woolies and like buy shit on special. And so we would have these. It was such a weird conundrum. Now to think back at it, she would want to go out to the organic store 10 years ago. I'm like, yo, like buy shit on special. Why do you have to be such a high maintenance girl? And she's just like, well, I just want the best. And
yeah,
and isn't that crazy? Because I'm looking for like special and deals and Woolies, and I'm going, hey, you should buy like $10 chicken, buy $3 mints. Oh, what's wrong? What's worse than $3 mints, bro? Now that we know, what could be worse than $3 mints? But back then I didn't. And back then, and what's the root cause? It was money. Like, she'd come
100%.
over, she'd leave the heater on in the other room. I'd get pissed at her. I'd be like, hey, honey, why'd you leave the heater on? Turn off the heater. Don't you know? But, and then I'm making up bullshit excuses like, oh, it's just inconsiderate, or, oh, it's just a waste of energy. Have you heard that before? It's a waste of energy to leave the heater on. But really what was happening, I was a non-producing tight ass that then allowed my relationship, the most important thing, my wife, my relationship with Kerry, the mother of my kids, telling her, labeling her, abusing her, creating stories about her because the root cause of money. And so I think if we investigate that a little bit more, that's a really big thing, I would say, as men, as fathers.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like I look at, like, money's the pathway to trust, because for 99.9% of people, unless you're, scamming, swindling, or you catch some sort of lucky break, which means it wouldn't last anyway, because it's the foundation of who you are that creates a momentum of continued wealth. It's the pathway. Here's a perfect example for those listening. You ever hear the fucking saying, oh man, this kills me, money can't buy your happiness? It's bullshit. Because it can. It's the vehicle to experiences and so many other opportunities that you have, firstly. But secondly, just to go straight for the kill for anyone who disagrees with me on the podcast, listening to it, if you had but true, like, look at it this way. If you had $1 billion, when do you feel happiest at Christmas? When you're receiving or giving gifts? When you're giving. So if you had $1 billion and you could donate 100 million to some sort of charity or some sort of part of the world, or blah, would that make you happy? Fucking oath it would. So money actually can make you happy through the gift of different ways. But that's where, like, just to paint that picture on what you asked, man, this is where my life was, right? 2015. Used my wife's credit card and all of her income going into a shared account to live off and be an athlete instead of paying our rent. So we had a big bill due then. Got out of the gym. I had no gym. The gym that I was going to set up on the Central Coast failed, didn't get council approval, and things just messed up and it didn't work out. I had nothing, man. It's actually quite funny. I was reflecting. I had 4 different jobs. This is in 2015. This is only, sort of 7-8 years ago. Had 4 different jobs. I was doing online programming. I was working for a chief nutrition bar and supplement place. I was doing a couple of classes a week at 2 different gyms. I had like 4 jobs, man. It was insane. And no money was coming in there. We were trialing an error and she finally fell pregnant, which means coming through. Stella was born in 2016. Then I bought a gym, CrossFit Raw Commando. It had put me in a big hole. The culture was bad there. I over leveraged and borrowed money and went in the hole very, very quickly there. Took on that gym. That was failing. I was traveling an hour and a half, depending on traffic, every day, up and down, both ways, while my wife was heavily pregnant and gave birth to Stella. And the one of my life fell to shit in 2017 because I had no money, Lynn, and I had no stability, and I was in more debt than I'd ever been before in my life. That's what led to I look at all those situations, every single one of them, the trial and error of getting married, having children through IVF, the tribulations and challenges with starting new businesses, buying businesses, traveling, the car that I had, which was fucking dying on me. I look at all those things and, like you said, remove the stories, money would have resolved 99% of the challenges Corinne and I were going through from 2015 to 2018.
All the fights, all the arguments. I'm just going to go back to that. I think, we talk about money not buying you happiness. It's not so much that it's buying. I think there's a flip side to that. I think there's a side where people give up their family, friends, they become assholes and they chase money. And so the narrative happens because, you see this person chasing money, they stop talking to you, they're mean to you, they treat you like dirt because you have no money. I think there's that side which is valid. But I'd like to think that money, not so much buys me happiness or anything like that. Money gives you patience. And patience is the most important thing you need as a man, a business owner, a husband, to literally just be patient. Like if Ocean breaks the glass, my favorite coffee glass, I'm not going to, spit the dummy because that's the glass. I'm not going to say, Ocean, how could you be so careless, or pretend like it's something. It's an inconvenience. Okay. But it's there because I have to clean it up. It's a mess, but then I have to replace it. If she threw a rock at my Porsche yesterday, bro. Threw a rock. She's like, Daddy, I'm going to throw a rock. And I'm like, yo, lucky, that's me. Lucky I got, like, even then I was twitching my ass. Like, yo, that's...
What would Elle do? Elle's got patience. What would Alex do?
Right? Even at that level. Like, cool. There's just levels. You know what I mean? Like...
That's what I was saying about your watches. You got your watches everywhere.
That's right. It's just levels. And so I'm like, lucky that, you're not throwing it at... Lucky this is not, my dad's car, because my dad would have given her a different response. Just like, whack, great whack, right? But... money buys you patience, and I think it's so important for a man, getting back to that, to get your money situation sorted. And if you haven't gotten it, you got to figure it out. Because I think the fundamentals of a really good family dynamic in what I've seen is when your wife can feel the ability to literally be a mum and be okay and still have her needs met. Like, she'll want this and she'll want that. Women just want everything. There was this saying I said on the other podcast, men want power and pussy. Like, we want women and we want more power. We want to become more powerful. We want to have more success, power, and women. That's literally what you and I wake up thinking about. That drives 99.999% of our actions. And women want everything. That's the other thing. Women want the holidays. Women want to be a stay-at-home mum. They want to have their side little hustle business. Maybe they want to be a boss babe today. Maybe they want to have lots of friends. Maybe they don't want to have any friends at all. It just is what it is, man. And when you can accept that as truth, and if you can accept that truth, then you can operate within truth. And now you can win the game because you know how to operate and play the game. I used to look back at Karen and go, hey, like, I gave you that one holiday. Why do you want another one? I just paid for that holiday. That was a real expense. We went out. We went to Europe. We've done your dream. She's like, no, I want that every month. And I'm like, fuck. You know? And until I operated within the truth, like my responsibility as part of the family unit is to provide and protect. Like, and if I can do my job, then she can enable to be the rock and the foundation for the kids and give them the patience and love that they need. And I can come in and I can help them with leadership and I can help be a role model for them. And so going back to that, the woman has the most important job in the world that unfortunately is not recognized. It's not, you know, the woman that's being a mum is not posting about being a mum on social media, because as soon as you post shit on social media, you are no longer being the mum. Does that make sense? The ironic part is these women, these people that are doing a great job are unrecognized, because if they were posting and they were getting the recognition, they wouldn't be doing it. Yes. Yeah. So all these mums on social media that are like great mums, I don't know if they're a great mum, because I wouldn't want to be sitting next to you whilst, and then, you know, having dinner with the kids while you're like setting up your camera and making sure it's all faked, right? Yeah. It's all staged. And so by just even documenting it, you're changing the paradigm of what being a great mum is. Are you a great mum, or are you a great mum because people are watching you? Are you just genuinely a great mum because you want the best for your kids, or are you a great mum because you want other people to think you're a great mum?
It's hard, isn't it? Because
I think that's the most fucked up part about social media is genuinely we don't know. We have all these people that we look at and we're like, oh, you're a great mum. But fuck, man, if I was to look in their lives, if I was to be their husbands, and my wife is literally going, wait, kids, you can't eat yet because like I have to get a camera out. We have to get camera, and she's like, not. Holy shit, man, that's just
it's tough too, because it's such to get the outwardly recognized importance of being a mum. That outward recognition is something that is so delayed. And that's tough, because as a mum, you can get, as long as you have a man who understands and respects and values your role as a mother, which is tough. And then on the flip side, you've got, you know, people attacking your wife and the mother of your children, telling her she shouldn't be a mother. And then you're not telling her how amazing she is as a mother.
Yeah. They're screwed. Like, forget about it. Why would, like, us like there's just the thing like this, and I want to appreciate fathers too, but genuinely, like, Mother's Day is coming up, so this is going to be a lot of love to all the mums out there. I know that if I had to choose between working out, running the business, or spending a day with the kids, or spending a day with your kids, bro. Okay, my kids are okay. They're Asian. They're like half disciplined, half scared, right? Your white kids, bro. That's crazy shit. That's like 3 kids. Crazy, right? I'd work out first. I'd work out 5 times that day, and I'd build 10 companies. I'd build 10 companies, and I'd stay away from the kids. But it's not that I don't love my kids. I love my kids. I love spending time with the kids. But there's another level when you are spending time to raise them, to be patient with them, to play with them, to stimulate them. Like quite often dads go to work, they come home, and then they just have that 1 hour spurt, and the kids are all fun. So you get the best part of the day, which is the kids are fun. You fuck up the mum's routines with the kids, right? You screw up all of her work, you have fun, and then that in itself creates an argument because she's upset at you, and she has every right to be, because you've just come in and kind of messed up her whole unit that she set up for the day. Yeah, that role of being a mum. What were you going to say?
Yeah, no, well, I was going to say, like, it's tough because, we get a lot of the rewards too at the certain time of day, or with a fun dad or whatnot.
100%. The mum's just been cranky. The mum's been the dictator, telling off the kids, disciplining and telling them no, feeding them food, putting them in place. And then we come home, you know, and then like, daddy, and then we're like, whoa, mum, just relax. Why are you being so uptight? And that in itself is an argument. And I think I've had that with Kerry, and she had to sit me down and she had to say, hey, look, like it's really about quite a lot of conflict is because we don't seek to understand. Conflict is a result of miscommunication, misalignment, misunderstanding things. Yes. And in that moment, it's so easy for Kerry to get triggered, and it's completely reasonable. But she's got this thing where she can actually like just sit down, breathe, take it, and then like 2 hours later, just say, hey, you know what? Like, next time when you come home, can you do this differently? And I think that like if people just did that, just had more patience, then there wouldn't be as many fights. There wouldn't be as many cracks. There wouldn't be as many leaks. And it's fucking hard. It's not, you know, it sounds like sainthood, but it's like, you just have to try and
for those men, without seeking to understand, what that means is you could never acknowledge. And that's what your wife wants.
You can't acknowledge, and you have no respect. And I think there's
Yes.
one thing that respect is the most important thing in the relationship. Does that
Mm.
make sense? Like when I'm working with you, I respect your roles, you respect my roles, and that's what we have. I go, Alex has got my back here, Lynn's got his back here. Same thing with Kerry in the family unit at home. I respect Kerry so much as a mum, and she respects me so much as a dad. It's greater than love. Like I think
Yeah.
love
It's a
is
lag measure. Love's a
yeah.
lag measure of outcomes, man. And you do those outcomes because you respect the person and value them. You know.
Love is somewhat overrated. I'd say love is overrated. Love is a tricky one. Love is like so good at the start, and you think it's just chemicals inside of your body that's building up, and lust and love and cravings. But I think to build, and we're not talking about how to like have love with your wife. What we're talking about is how to build a great family unit, how to build a family that lasts, like keep the family together. Because I know that there's nothing like for you and me, a family is the most important thing. Like if I lost Ocean, and last year I nearly did, and that was like, if I lost Ocean, and I'm sure you've gone through many surgeries with your kids, but you know that if you were going to lose a child, the world stops and nothing else matters. And you sacrifice everything. You'd sacrifice everything to get them back, right?
Mm.
And it leads me on to the next conundrum, that men will sacrifice their families, like their loved ones, their kids, their children, their health, in order to get wealth so that they can make their families happy when their families just literally wanted them to be happy. And there's just this, instead of going through this whole rat race of trying to do all these things to get back to the point you were, why don't you just stay at the point you are and just appreciate and build on the point that you are? Because we have this story inside of our mind. Like if we do all these things, we'll make them happy. And there's this whole narrative, there's this whole hero's journey that you'll be the hero. And it's kind of like, but they're just here now.
And if you're already deep in that as a father, here's your answer. You need to develop better skills, man, and you got to fucking move, because you can't just trade when you're like with me with the 3 kids. I cannot just trade time for money anymore. I need to get more skillful. If you're a man listening to this who hasn't hit that stage yet of father and whatnot, well, start fucking now. Start early. Because just to tie all this in, because I know a lot of men listening to this would be like, well, you're speaking about money, Alan Lynn, and then you're talking about your wives and appreciate. Well, here's the thing, right? Patience equals perspective too. So if you can provide patience, if money brings patience and patience can bring perspective for you and your girlfriend or wife, then what that actually provides is opportunity and choices to really thrive where you won't have them. And it's a great book by Keith Cunningham, The Road Less Stupid, and he says it quite simply: lousy, lousy people have lousy choices because they don't have the opportunity to create the life they can because their choices are limited. So people with better lives have better choices. And one of the main vehicles in the modern world to get there is this, which is why when we talk about power, Lynn, and what men want, it's like old mate from Spider-Man: with great power comes great responsibility. It's actually the opposite. For you young men listening to this now, the opposite from what Uncle Ben said to Peter Parker is true. With great responsibility comes great power, which is why if you get your fucking shit together and you find ways to level yourself up, make more money, build more skills and value, and take that step and commit into marriage and those lives, taking that responsibility will equal massive dividends in the power that you will wield and have as you get older.
Yeah, I agree. Last question of the day. So why do so many people stay in this rut of a marriage? Like I know a couple of people close to me that have great kids, but their marriage is a rut, but they just whine about it. They whine about the other partner. They go, oh, but he's not doing his part and he sucks as a dad. And, and then they look at me and they go, oh, Lynn, if I had you as my husband, etc., etc. I'm like, and it's so much envy. And I go, that's sad. Because I go, well, first, like, they come to me for advice and then I generally tell them off and ask them what they're not doing, and then they get triggered, right? Because it's like, I really don't like people that complain, because I'm like, but if you're complaining, you can change it. And there's something that you're not doing in your life that if you change, then it would create that spiral effect, and it creates the change in the other person. If you are so generous and you are so loving unconditionally to another person, I guarantee you'll find a way that person will click and flick the switch, and they'll actually start to go, wow, I'm gonna reciprocate. Like, we just mirror, right? So what you're giving is what you're getting. Why do you think so many people stay in this rut? And there's this rut. I see so many complaints in the community of men that are coming in and they're just like, Al, you don't understand. My wife's a bitch. you know, if she did this, I want to do all these things. I want to make all these changes. But what about her? What about her? Why doesn't she do this? Is there like high performance women?
It's the dichotomy of life, I think, man. When I look at it, have a look at us at the core level. The dichotomy of life as a human being is we are lazy fucking creatures. And what the reason why it's the dichotomy of life is there's a deep, big part of us that's fucking lazy and wants to do the bare minimum. And the equal opposite of that is we're probably the most progressive and evolutionary creatures on this planet. And the reason why I bring that up is it's so much fucking easier. That's what I mean by lazy, Lynn. It's so much fucking easier to point the finger and say, oh, look at all their problems and faults and flaws. That's way easier than taking ownership over your own bullshit and doing work and doing something about it. I think that's probably my first answer, but that always comes down to a choice. So maybe
but what does a guy actually do in that situation where his wife is pretty poor, she's poor form, okay, and he's like, okay, I'm willing to change, and then, you know, he's been abused by her and put down by her his whole life, so everything he does is wrong, right? Like if you're in a situation, everything you do is wrong, you're a loser, you can't produce. They've got 3 kids together, the kids are keeping them together. What do you do in that situation? Like practically, okay? The wife doesn't trust him anymore, abuses him, calls him a loser. He's got no self-esteem. He's just listening to her. He's literally working at a job, coming home, and he's in a bad environment. What do you start? Because I think the reality is, like, I can see it here from this perspective, and people listening will go, yeah, but my wife, I wish I had a wife like Kerry who could sit down and be patient and tell me off. My wife just fucking abuses me when I get home. The first thing, she throws shit at me. There's no sex. We haven't had sex for ages. She makes me feel bad for asking. She rejects me all the fucking time. She doesn't respect me. She there's no respect for the husband, and he's carrying a lot of the weight because he's making the money, you know. And every man has different cards, and I'm just interested to go through like the multiverse, the million different types of men, and I go, how would I figure it out this way? There's a path to figure it out. Is it hard? Extremely. Can you see in the woods with all the tangled weeds? Absolutely not. But I rather than I just want to dive in, because I would go, what would I do in that shit show?
That was me in my life, and I was experiencing.
You come home, your wife thinks you're a loser. You got 3 kids. She doesn't respect you. She constantly rejects you when you ask for sex.
It's a hard one to answer because I'm with the perspective where a man probably wouldn't think this way, or a lot of men commonly. But the very first thing I would do would be a triage on myself in asking some deep quality questions. What are the possible reasons that has led to the position that I'm currently in not getting X, Y, and Z from my wife, and this not being true, and this not, and then reviewing and analyzing where am I don't like fault and blame, but where am I most responsible or 100% responsible for those outcomes? Is it possible to change them?
What am I not doing? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What am I not doing? What don't I see? And what can I do about it? And then I would actually work on myself first. And then, because I think the greatest form of communication, Lynn's example, followed by listening, followed by talking. I think that's probably my top 3 in that order. But that's what I do first, triage, to first understand. Because then this is the same guy, right, who maybe he does want to change. So he's trying and trying and trying. It's fucking falling on deaf ears.
I get it. It's hard because my previous relationship, like I felt like that guy. You know what I mean? So I'd come home. And I think coming down to this, I think it comes down to a lack of courage. Like lack of courage to assess the situation and go, this situation is not the situation that I want to be in. And also with courage, it's actually having the self-respect to acknowledge that I don't want to be in this shitty marriage. And I think when you have the ability to see that and the courage to see that, then you have to take some sort of action, because there can only be two types of outcomes from here. Like outcome number 1, yes, you get a marriage that you want, and it's like, fuck, this is the marriage that I want. It's absolutely on fire. I love her. She loves me. We have great sex. We're connected. We have aligned visions. We want to parent this way. She's got her role. I've got my role. Unfortunately, the next thing is divorce. And I think when I think about that, most men that stay in this pit don't want to go get divorced because they can't see the other side. Does that make sense? They're more close to divorce than the version of, fuck, this is going to be, we can be partners. We can be like together. And I think it's sad. It's sad because I genuinely think I genuinely think people should get divorced. And I genuinely think, here's what I'm saying, that people should get remarried. Like, it's okay to get divorced and say, hey, I made a mistake. And it's also okay to remarry and try a second time. Like, find the next, I don't know about being divorced and staying single. because I don't know if I could do that. Because I need a family. Like that's just part of my need to be successful in life. I feel like I need to have a really good family, and I need to raise them. It's going to be fun, and this is what I'm working towards: the relationships of the family, right? But I think a lot of guys, when they think about getting divorced, they think it's failure, which
Yes.
I don't think that's true.
And also they probably think if we stay under the same house, under the same roof in the same house, it's for the kids. But I guess what I would prompt every man to ask, and maybe even ask one day with his wife when they sit down, is the question: when our kids grow up and move out of this place and find their own home, what's keeping us together? And that's tough, man, because a lot of guys will settle and they'll do that, but then as soon as the kids do leave, they get divorced and they think that's okay, we did the right thing. And the unfortunate part is, because I've got a fair few members who've gone through that, it's not great, because guess what? The backlash from the children who are now adults, who have this seed that was planted, look back and they're like, well, the whole fucking time raising us was a scam. It didn't even exist. All of that was just a sham. It actually wasn't real. You were just together for us. And then they're left empty, which is pretty tough, man, because then they're adults carrying the same baggage now, right?
It's all the same. It all gets copied and pasted into the same DNA, right? Next generation copies and pastes what we do. And so I suppose the other thing is, if you know, if you are in a bad relationship, I think the first thing is you got to have the courage to decide, is this what I want? And do you respect yourself enough to actually go get what you want? Like, are you willing to put in the work to go get what you want? If this is not what you want, you got to leave. Okay, you got to make an ultimatum. Hey, we either fix this, or I'm leaving, or I'm out. And I think that, rather than staying in the rut, and I think, like we talked about right at the very start, men just don't want to do shit until like there's so much pressure on it that they have to do stuff. And I think that's where a lot of men find themselves. Like, quite often, it's the women wanting a divorce, not the man. Right? It's the women going, "Hey, I'm going to divorce you." The man is just slowly drifting away, and he thinks he can hold it all together. And then the woman just comes along. She either cheats on him, or he cheats on her, or he does something, and then she ends up divorcing him. And then when you run into that battle, well, as we talked about it earlier, men aren't left in a very good spot. When that place comes, when the woman fights and wants custody and there's child support, men are not in a very good spot at all when it comes to the divorce.
Very true. And it's tough, man, and it's something where, like you said, that there needs to be a seeking of realignment, and then maybe it isn't the path moving forward, but you've learnt and you're developing yourself to learn for the next one. Or maybe, hey, at least you've tried everything you can. Or on the flip side, we can make this work and we are aligned. We've just lost sight of investing inside of each other, because it's like a cloud, isn't it? Marriage is quite an interesting, fascinating organism where you need to feed it constantly. That's investing in each other and what you've bought into and agreed into, like what you've spoken about every year. You remarry, Kerry, and you need to create alignment, which is actually feeding it the right thing. You don't want to poison your marriage, but you need to feed it so it doesn't starve. That's quite rare, I think, in today's world, because everyone's too fucking busy, Lynn. Or they've got alternatives, or they assume things or have expectations without actually seeking to understand.
I just don't think there's a modern way that a family unit could run and should run. I think when we go back to 20, 30 years ago, people go, that's too outdated, it's too traditional. People also are afraid of religious kind of families that run their family unit that way, because the religion has a bad stigma around it. And so I think people are missing a blueprint of to how do you build a great family? How do you build a great family? How do you have a wife that adores you? How do you have kids that adore you? How do you actually lead great children? I think that's a blueprint that I'm interested in uncovering. I'm interested in finding that out. Mm. And so, with that being said, I think let's wrap up this first episode. What do you think, Al, we have in store for the next couple of others? What is the All In podcast going to be about? Like, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to ruffle some feathers to really talk about real things that actually matter? Okay, give straightforward, honest opinions. Let's not stand in the shadows. What do you want to talk about that you feel like is needed to talk about, that is needed to get out there in the marketplace, that men need to hear, that families need to hear? What's important?
Well, I think where we should start, mate, off the back of this episode, it's awesome, I've enjoyed the start here, is really helping highlight, again, people don't have to be aligned with us, but for you and I being on the same page, we need to first define, if we're talking about a blueprint, what the blueprint is not, right? Because there's a few things, even from agricultural, industrial revolution, the technology age, the speed in which we're traveling through this current stage is why there's no blueprint, because it's so fucking chaotic and fast. So what we need to first do is look at all those blueprints out there, like the alphabet people, like the fucking masculine and feminine, like the education system, like the mainstream media,
We're
and all
gonna
these
break it.
fucking
We're gonna break
agendas.
it down now. We're gonna break
All of
down.
every fucking one. This is what the blueprint is not. This is, and it's not our opinion. It's an observation of the actions and where the fucking world is at the moment. If you want a good family unit with love, respect, and integrity, this is not the blueprint.
Yeah.
This is not. So I think that's where we go first, man. This is what it wouldn't be, and what it is not. I think that'll maybe strike some controversy, but also I think we'll find people who are on the same page going, yeah, you know what, you're right. I wasn't sure about that, but now I'm observing the outcomes because it's been in place for 1 year, 3 years, 8 years. That's not fucking right. That's not how it should be for our children. And I'm looking forward to.
So we want to talk about things like LGBTQ, how that is affecting our kids inside of school. Like, do you want kids to learn about that? I think I read something before, a few days ago, that they're teaching kids all about kind of in their when they're teaching them about sex ed, they're showing two boys sleeping together, they're showing two girls sleeping together, and then they're showing a man and a woman having missionary. Okay, but these are the things that kind of go, we're bringing a highlight to it, because I genuinely feel like a lot of these things that are being pushed onto us, I don't even know, bro. Like I was telling you when you came over a month ago, I'm like, dude, like I can't look at a rainbow now without actually looking at a rainbow and just
that's been destroyed.
LGBTQ, right? I think I feel like that was hijacked from our kids somewhat.
Agreed.
Like I feel like, wow, like every time Ocean points at a rainbow, like you're looking at a rainbow watch, you can't buy it, just because that whole it's been hijacked from our children. And when that happens, I don't want to particularly stand for that. I want to voice it out because I feel like there's a minority that's voicing them, and they're very aggressive. The minority is voicing their stuff, but the majority of people who are sensible, and when I ask people down the streets, hey, do you want your kids to be taught this stuff in school? They're like, no. And we're all sitting behind the scenes, and yet nobody in the majority is having the balls to actually stand up and talk about any of this stuff. And I think there are more voices, which is really cool. However, I want to be a strong voice, and I want to allow HPF and this community to be a strong voice, to actually voice the things we want for our kids, voice the way that our kids are taught. What is marriage? Voice together what a great relationship looks like. Voice together that, hey, mums, literally, like, you are the most important thing in the world. Like the world would not run without mothers. That's why it's called Mother Earth, right? Like, voice the importance of mums and give them the respect as well. Also respect the men. That, like, cities were built on men's backs. There's no plumbing without the majority of men. I don't see a lot of women doing plumbing work. I don't see a lot of women doing bricklaying work. There are cities. And I feel like rather than going on a power trip, some feminists will be like, feminists can do everything. And I go, yeah, you can do everything, but should you do everything? And the answer is no. I think fundamentally we're going to get back down to do the best, to do the things that we're best at, and then give each other acknowledgement and respect for doing that work. And so it just comes down to this world where shit's just so confusing. Like I'm even looking at a blueprint of what it's like to be a man, and I'm fucking confused. I'm simply just trying to do the best that I can with Carrie, and my kids, and every day it's kind of like another battle. Is every day perfect? Fuck no. Like, so far from perfect. Does every day get a little bit better? Yes. Do I have days where I'm triggered and not on point? Of course. But I think there's a bigger conversation here that we need to have, and I'm excited to have that discussion on the All In. On top of that as well, I think as well, passion topic of you and I is talking about production and business and being able to make money as a man. I think, we talk about how to be a great father, we talk about how to be a great husband, but there's one thing that a man plays in his role to his family is to provide and protect. So we'll look at providing, and we'll talk about business, talk about advertising, marketing, sales, recruitment, team members, systems, finance, and all that shit, right? Because that was something that took me years to figure out. And it's still taking me extra years to actually like uncover the next steps, right? I know you're going through this process with 4 Hour CEO, which is phenomenal, by the way. But I'd love to get your insights on that, because I know that business is like if we think about pussy as half of our brand, business as the other half, then it's kind of like, okay, we have this half sorted. If we can become more patient, how do we get the business going well? So, like I said, when you have more money, you're more patient. Like the end, period.
Love it, man. All great things to talk about. Looking forward to more.
Beautiful. Let's wrap this up, guys. If you like this, leave a comment down below. Ask us any questions. What would you like to see on the All In podcast? Who would you like us to interview? Do you like this format? Do you want something more structured? Do you want us to talk about news articles? What do you want us to talk about? What do you want us to address on the All In podcast? And you'll get myself, you'll get Al. Maybe Al will bring in some guest experts. We'll interview them. We'll interrogate them. We'll ask them questions. We'll learn from them. Whatever the case is. With that being said, thanks so much for tuning in. Till next time, we will see you next time. Bye-bye, guys.
See ya.